The Eurovision Song Contest is a competition where every European nation competes in a singing strife to take home the glass microphone and a lot of national prestige. However, some countries have won the contest more times than others, so it's safe to say that not everyone has the exact same chance of winning. In Eurovision, there are a couple of things that nations can do to improve those odds. So let's talk about them and find out how to win the Eurovision Song Contest. The Eurovision Song Contest, or ESC if you don't have much time, started in 1956 with 7 participating countries, with their goal being to stimulate collaboration between these countries, aka the opposite of what the contest does today. The European states sing songs and the viewers give points to their favorite songs from other countries, and the country with the most points wins. Over time, more nations wanted to participate in the contest, especially after the fall of the Eastern Bloc. Now that there are a lot of nations involved, all of them have to go through the semi-finals first, where they need to get enough points on their first song to qualify for the finals, where the winner is actually chosen. However, there is one important exception to this rule, that being the Big Five. France, Germany, the UK, Spain and Italy pay the most money to the European Broadcasting Union, or EBU, which organizes the occasion. Because of this, they are allowed to skip the semifinals altogether, which gives them an advantage. And so these 5 have won their fair share of contests thanks to their contributions. There's also another rule in Eurovision that favors the rich. If a country wins a song contest, then they must become the host of the next one. This is unlike the Olympic Games or the World Cup, in which the hosts are volunteers. Hosting events can be expensive, so for a lot of participants, a valid strategy is to intentionally lose a contest so that they don't have to become the next host. This is why you might see a lot of, let's say, interesting performances during the contest. But I mean, that only improves the whole show, am I right? Rule 1. Be rich. The word diaspora can be defined as groups of people who live outside of their homeland. A common example of this are the groups of English, Irish, Scottish, German and other settlers who left Europe for North America since the 16th century to build the United States. But those migrants didn't necessarily make their home country any richer. However, in Eurovision, diaspora can be used to gain an advantage for the home country. One who benefits a lot from this is Turkey, since Western Europe has many Turkish citizens, which explains why these nations often give points to Turkey. For example, in 2006, Turkey found itself in the finals, but only placed 11th out of the 24 countries. A passable placement that was only supported by Western Europe. However, the European country with the largest diaspora is actually Ukraine, and a fairly large amount of that diaspora lives in the neighboring Moldova, where Ukrainians make up about 6.6% of the population, which should be even higher thanks to the recent surge as a result of the war. While Moldova and Ukraine do share a similar past under the Soviet Union and are geographically close, they don't have many other similarities. Moldova speaks a Romance language, Ukraine a Slavic one. Most of Moldova's population is rural, while Ukraine is more urban. But even with these differences, Moldova consistently gives a lot of points to Ukraine. In fact, the only time that Moldova didn't give Ukraine any points was in 2017. That's because nobody liked their song that year anyways. While Moldova's voting pattern cannot only be explained by the Ukrainian diaspora, it is definitely a major factor. Rule 2. Have a large European diaspora, like Ukraine. 2 of the core principles of the ESC are diversity and individuality. Individuality is shown off by letting a country express its own identity through song, and diversity is shown off by allowing many different cultures to be shown off to the world. Another community that has always been in favor of these principles is the LGBT community. While it would have been difficult for them to openly participate in the previous century, the diversity of the contest increases as the acceptance of the LGBT community increases. Both them and Eurovision share those same values, so it's only natural that they would shape a sort of symbiosis. Transgenders like Israel's Dana International, bisexuals like the Netherlands' Duncan Lawrence, and drags like Austria's Katina Wurst have won the contest at some point since the 90s. These countries are more Western, and it is true that things are a tad trickier in Eastern Europe, where acceptance can vary. On one hand, we've got countries like Serbia and Ukraine, who've been making good progress on that front. But on the other hand, there are the difficult ones. Countries who do not accept the LGBT community usually do not do well if they openly tell everyone, like when Russia approved the so-called anti-gay law in 2013, resulting in them not only losing to Katina Wurst in 2014, but also getting booed by the audience whenever they picked up any points. Turkey hasn't participated since 2013, and Hungary neither since 2020 for similar reasons. Technically, not participating is just another way to guarantee your loss. So if you want to win the ESC, you should probably, compete. Even from something as simple as Eurovision, you can clearly see which countries are trying to westernize and which ones aren't. Rule 3. Support the LGBT community, like Ukraine. Among the participants are countries that form so-called voting blocs because they vote in similar ways. Countries from Scandinavia, the Balkans and Eastern Europe tend to vote for each other. Greece and Cyprus will always give each other 12 points if both of them are competing, which has become a running joke within the community. While these peculiar polling patterns do exist, they're often interpreted in the wrong way. Many people think that these voting blocs are politically motivated and are the deciding factor for the winner, but that's not the case. Ireland has won 7 contests, the most out of any country, but they usually aren't considered to be part of a bloc. No, the reason why they have won so much is simply because their songs were good. We can also debunk it with one simple example: Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia has participated since 1961, but they saw little success until they won in 1989, only 2 years before getting caught up in multiple wars of independence, with many horrific events happening along the way. When everything was settled, Yugoslavia was reduced to Serbia and Montenegro, while Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and North Macedonia gained their independence. Serbia and Montenegro re-entered the ESC in 2004 and immediately got second place. Why? Because Croatia, Slovenia and Bosnia gave their 12 points to them, with North Macedonia pitching in 10 and even Albania giving 7. Despite these countries being at war just a decade before, they still voted for each other and continue to do so. So voting blocs are not necessarily political, instead they are mostly cultural. Countries that are similar to each other culturally tend to vote for each other, and Serbia and Montenegro would have won this contest if it weren't for the winner. Yup, it's Ukraine. Maybe we need to add another rule to make things more clear. Rule 4. Share cultures. Like Ukraine. It's safe to say that Ukraine has a large European diaspora, promotes the LGBT community, shares cultures with some of its neighbors, and doesn't throw the competition to not have the host. But are those the only things that can explain their massive success? People might crown Ireland as the king of Eurovision due to having won a staggering 7 contests, but that's because Ireland has joined most of the contests, which isn't fair towards newcomers. So instead, let's apply a sort of population density to Eurovision by dividing the amount of wins by the amount of participations. By doing this, we can see that the king of Eurovision is clearly Ukraine, and by a long shot. Ireland even loses to Luxembourg, even if it is just barely and unfairly. No, there is definitely something else going on here. And for those who have seen the massive lead in points that Ukraine received through televoting in 2022 in the wake of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, you can probably connect the dots and figure out what's going on here. Soft power. When the Soviet Union successfully tested their first atomic bomb in the steppes of Kazakhstan, an event that Russia and Ukraine worked on together and witnessed together, our world has been in a situation where the major world powers do not want to go to war with each other out of fear of the bomb. However, this didn't stop them from threatening each other with the bomb. The Soviet Union already had most of Eastern Europe under its control and was periodically putting pressure on the West in order to make them submit. This is known as hard power. Hard power is using a military or economic sanctions to influence others into thinking a certain way, which in this case is the threat of nuclear annihilation. And what was made clear in 1991 is that it didn't work. But hard power isn't the only way to influence people's thoughts. There's also soft power, and it's even better than hard power. Soft power is exerted by spreading your own culture to people so that they start thinking in the same way, which is what the United States did after World War II, spreading consumer culture to Western Europe. Ukraine has of course picked up on this, and in 2014, they responded to Russia's hard power, invading Crimea, with soft power, singing a song about the deportation of the Crimean Tatars during the 1940s. And of course, they won. Ukraine isn't the only country that has used soft power to do well, but as you can see from the results of 2022, Ukraine has seen the most success from it. Rule 5. Exert soft power, like Ukraine. The most common criticism of the Eurovision Song Contest is that it is too political, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing, because it still fulfills its goal of stimulating collaboration between European countries. Besides, the ones that win the contest don't always use political means to get there. They may be supporting the event with their money, while sending over workers from their culture to other countries who support diversity and share their culture with the rest of the world. These are non-political ways to win the Eurovision Song Contest. But I am of course overlooking the most obvious one, which is that the best song wins. Like, come on, what did you expect? Hey everyone. I don't know if anyone actually noticed or cares, but the art of this video might look a little more rough. That's actually because this is the first video I've ever worked on for this channel, but I chose to delay it so that I could actually release it when Eurovision was happening. So, happy anniversary to Extra and Exile being a thought. Anyways, I am of course obligated to ask you to subscribe, and see ya!